I never intended for it to go this far. My marriage to Jake had become a cycle of the same conversations, the same dinners, and the same silences. The excitement had faded into a comfortable yet suffocating routine. Then Michael walked back into my life like a scene straight out of a movie. But there was nothing romantic about the turmoil that followed. It was an ordinary Tuesday when I bumped into Michael at the local coffee shop. The surprise in his eyes mirrored mine, and our casual, "How have you been?" quickly turned into a 2 hour conversation. We laughed, reminiscing about college days, and then the conversation shifted. We shared our dreams and frustrations, and I found myself opening up about my stagnant marriage. Michael listened, his eyes filled with an understanding that felt like a lifeline. We left the coffee shop with the promise to catch up again, but I didn't realize then how dangerous that promise was. Michael and I began texting. At first, it was just funny memes and harmless updates, but soon our messages became the highlight of my day. He got me. It felt exhilarating to connect with someone on a level I hadn't realized I was missing. The justification for my growing attachment to Michael was simple. My marriage felt beyond repair. Jake and I were like roommates, polite strangers sharing a space. Michael offered an escape, a glimpse into a life filled with excitement and understanding. Our secret meetings started innocently enough. We told ourselves it was for a community project that didn't exist. We met at hidden cafes and quiet parks, places where our paths wouldn't cross with anyone we knew. Each meeting felt more thrilling than the last, a rebellion against the monotony of my life with Jake. Then one evening, as we lingered over goodbyes, Michael kissed me. It was a moment suspended in time where all rational thought evaporated. I didn't stop him. That kiss marked the start of our affair, a secret kept from the world, especially from Jake. I found myself weaving a web of lies, each more elaborate than the last, to cover up my whereabouts. "I'm taking night classes," I told Jake, or "a friend needs my help." Each lie weighed on me, but the thrill of my secret with Michael pushed any guilt to the back of my mind. Looking back, I see how each choice was a step down a path that led to inevitable heartbreak. Yet in those moments, all I could see was the immediate escape Michael offered from a life I thought I no longer wanted. The day Michael gave me the necklace, everything changed. It was delicate, a silver chain with a pendant that caught the light in a way that mesmerized me. "For you," he said, his voice low, filled with a meaning I dared not decipher in the moment. I hid it in a sock drawer, a tangible symbol of our secret tucked away beneath layers of my ordinary life. But as the days passed, the weight of that necklace seemed to grow. Jake's eyes on me felt sharper, his questions more pointed. "You've been distant lately," he observed one evening, his voice tinged with a suspicion I hadn't heard before. "Is everything okay at work?" I brushed off his concerns with a hollow laugh and an assurance that all was well, but the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Our home, once a sanctuary, became a minefield. Jake's casual inquiries about my day felt like interrogations. In a moment of frustration, he finally confronted me. "Are you hiding something from me?" His question caught me off guard, my heart pounding in response. "Why would you even ask that? Don't you trust me?" I countered, deflecting his concern with indignation. But inside, a part of me screamed in guilt. Michael and I, meanwhile, grew bolder in our folly. We met openly, laughing too loudly in cafes, our hands lingering in shared glances that spoke volumes. It was a reckless display, one that caught the eye of a close friend who pulled me aside one day. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her worry evident. "You're playing with fire." I shrugged off her warning, too caught in the moment's thrill to heed her words. Then one day, the inevitable happened. Jake found the receipt for the necklace, a slip of paper that felt like a grenade in our life. "Where did this come from?" he asked, holding it out to me with a steady hand. My mind raced as I scrambled for a lie. "Oh, it's from a friend. She knew I was having a tough time." The words felt flimsy even as I spoke them, and I could see the doubt clouding his eyes. Tension thickened the air between Jake and me, a palpable barrier that neither of us could breach. He withdrew, wrapping himself in a silence that felt like a preemptive goodbye. I, on the other hand, delved deeper into my secret world with Michael, clinging to it as if it were a lifeline. But in truth, it was more of an anchor, dragging me further away from the life I once knew and deeper into a sea of deceit. The day Michael gave me the ultimatum was the day my world tilted on its axis. "It's him or me," he said, his voice firm, eyes searching mine for a decision I wasn't ready to make. The gravity of his words pressed down on me, heavy with the promise of a future I had fantasized about but never truly considered the logistics of. Yet in that moment, faced with the possibility of losing him, I found my resolve. I chose Michael, convinced that he was my path to a happiness I hadn't felt in years. The decision to leave Jake felt like stepping into an abyss. The night before I confessed, I lay awake, rehearsing my words, imagining scenarios where Jake would plead with me to stay. I had convinced myself that our years together would evoke some desperate attempt to salvage our marriage. But reality has a cruel way of shattering delusions. I've been having an affair, I confessed the next day, my voice barely above a whisper. I waited for the anger, the tears, anything that would show me he still cared. Instead, Jake's response was devastatingly calm. Okay, he said, pausing as if weighing his next words carefully. You should pack your things and go. No anger, no pleading, just a simple request to leave. It was a reaction I hadn't prepared for, and it shattered me more than any confrontation could have. Packing my things felt surreal, each item a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. I moved out with a mix of freedom and guilt churning in my stomach. I believed foolishly that Jake's life would crumble without me. I imagined him lost, unable to cope with the emptiness I left behind. But as the weeks turned into months, the truth became impossible to ignore. Jake's life didn't crumble. If anything, it flourished. He found solace in hobbies we never shared, surrounded himself with friends, and earned a promotion at work. His world kept turning, vibrant and full, while mine started to fade. Michael's attention, once so intoxicating, began to wane as the reality of our situation set in. Our conversations, once filled with dreams of the future, became sporadic and strained. The meetings that I had once looked forward to with such eagerness became less frequent, our excuses to see each other more forced. The thrilling connection that had led me to disrupt my entire life dimmed, leaving me to face the consequences of my actions alone. In this stark new reality, I found myself grappling with the aftermath of my choices. The freedom I thought I wanted felt hollow, tainted by the guilt of my betrayal, and the sobering realization that the grass isn't always greener. Michael, the catalyst for my drastic life change, slowly receded into the background of a life I no longer recognized as my own. As the dust settled on my new reality, the financial struggles began to mount. Without Jake's steady income, I found myself scrambling to make ends meet. The jobs I managed to secure were far from the comfort of our shared income. Each day, a relentless cycle of work with little to show for it. The weight of my choices became a constant companion, a reminder of what I had sacrificed for a fleeting illusion of happiness. Social isolation was a harsh reality I hadn't anticipated. Friends who I thought would stand by me chose Jake, their loyalty cementing my solitude. The few who remained were distant, their interactions laced with pity rather than the support I desperately needed. It was a loneliness that permeated every aspect of my life, a stark contrast to the vibrant social circle I once took for granted. Then came the discovery that shattered any remaining illusions I had about Michael and our future. I found out he was seeing someone else, the betrayal cutting deep. When I confronted him, his indifference was a cold splash of reality. "What did you expect?" he asked, his words echoing long after he left. I was left to grapple with the consequences alone, my dreams of us disintegrating into nothing. In my lowest moment, I reached out to Jake, clinging to a hope for reconciliation that was more about escaping my current reality than repairing our past. His response was a gentle yet firm closure. "I've moved on," he said, his voice reflecting a happiness that I once thought could only exist with me. He mentioned someone new, a mutual acquaintance who had been there for him, a stark reminder of the support system I had forsaken. Attempting to reconnect with old friends proved to be another exercise in futility. Their coldness was a clear message. The harm I had caused was irrevocable. Each interaction was a reminder of the ripple effects of my choices, the bridges burned beyond repair. Amidst this turmoil, my performance at work suffered. The stress and distraction took their toll, leading to mistakes I couldn't afford. The day I was let go from one of my jobs felt like hitting rock bottom. The stability I had once taken for granted was now a patchwork of temporary fixes, each day an uncertainty. This chapter of my life was marked by loss, of relationships, stability, and a sense of self. The consequences of my actions were a constant shadow, a lesson learned in the hardest way possible. As I faced each day, I was reminded of the cost of chasing what I thought was happiness, only to find myself further from it than ever before. The morning Jake filed for divorce felt like the world had finally decided to crumble beneath my feet. Sitting across from him in that sterile lawyer's office, the extent of my deception laid bare, I felt the final thread of my old life snap. The settlement was minimal, a reflection not only of the legal judgment, but also of the moral one against my actions. I had lost not just my husband, but everything our life together represented. Then came the final blow, a message from Michael, curt and devoid of any warmth we once shared. He was getting engaged to the other woman. The words on the screen blurred as the reality set in. I was completely alone. Michael, who I had risked everything for, had moved on without a backward glance. The pain of that betrayal was a harsh, cold wake-up call. Forced to confront the consequences of my actions, I moved into a small, rented apartment that stood in stark contrast to the life I once led. It was in this confined space, surrounded by the remnants of my past decisions, that I found myself unable to avoid reflection. The recognition of my mistakes came not as a profound revelation, but as a series of small, painful acknowledgments of the hurt I caused. In an attempt to claw my way out of the pit I had dug for myself, I enrolled in community college. It was a humbling experience, starting over when it felt like everyone else's life had moved on without me. Each day was a struggle, but in those struggles I found a glimmer of hope, a possibility of redemption, and a new path forward. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done with me yet. At a mutual friends event, I saw Jake and his new partner. The sight of him, visibly happier and moving on, was a gut punch. There he was, living the life we could have had. If only I hadn't strayed. The happiness on his face was a stark reminder of what I had lost, not just in Jake, but in myself. That encounter was a turning point. It forced me to confront the full weight of my actions, not just their impact on me, but on everyone I had hurt along the way. It was a painful realization, one that came with a deep sense of loss, not just for what was, but for what could have been. The moment Jake said farewell, a stark realization pierced through me. It wasn't just the end of our marriage, it was the shattering of the illusion that my actions were without consequences. That realization became the foundation of the new beginning I was forced to embark on. A journey fraught with challenges, but also marked by small victories. Determined to rebuild my life, I threw myself into my studies and part-time jobs with a fervor I hadn't known I possessed. The routine was grueling and the loneliness palpable, especially during holidays and weekends when the silence of my small apartment was most pronounced. Yet it was in this solitude that I found a sense of purpose, a drive to prove to myself, if no one else, that I could rise from the ashes of my own making. Volunteering at the local shelter became a balm for my guilt-ridden soul. Each act of service, each moment spent helping those less fortunate, felt like a step towards redemption. It was here, among the broken and the healing, that I found a sense of community that had eluded me since the fallout of my actions. Yet, the shadow of my past mistakes lingered, a reminder of the bridges burned and the relationships irreparably damaged. The isolation was a constant reminder of the social circle I had once taken for granted, now permanently diminished. The void left by lost friendships and estranged relationships was a stark contrast to the life I once led, filled with laughter and companionship. Now my only companions were the echoes of what could have been. Then the health scare came, a physical manifestation of the stress and neglect I had subjected myself to. It was a wake-up call, forcing me to confront the reality that I had been avoiding. My well-being mattered. The recovery was slow, a process filled with introspection and a reevaluation of my priorities. It was during this time that I truly began to understand the magnitude of my journey, the path to self-improvement and healing that lay ahead. Graduating from community college marked a significant milestone in this journey. It was a small achievement in the grand scheme of things, but for me, it represented so much more. It was a tangible symbol of my resilience, my commitment to changing the narrative of my life. Each step forward, no matter how small, was a victory against the despair that had once threatened to consume me. In the end, the realization that Jake's calm farewell was not a defeat, but a silent testament to his strength. And the profound impact of my choices became the cornerstone of my new reality. It was a reality I had to face alone, but one that I was now ready to embrace, armed with the lessons learned and the small victories that signified my resolve to move forward one step at a time. When the job offer came, it felt like a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea of my life. A position in a completely different field, in a city far from the memories and mistakes that haunted me. It promised a fresh start, a chance to rebuild from the ground up. I didn't hesitate. Packing my belongings felt symbolic, leaving behind not just physical items, but the remnants of a past life that no longer defined me. The move was a blur of activity, a physical manifestation of my desire to move forward. Arriving in the new city, the sense of anonymity was both freeing and daunting. Here no one knew my story. I was just another face in the crowd, wrestling with the ghosts of my past in silence. Loneliness, however, wasn't confined to the city I left behind. It followed me, a shadow that lingered in the quiet moments. My past actions, the betrayal, and the pain I caused were lessons etched deep in my soul. They taught me the value of trust and the weight of its breach. Starting over wasn't just about a new job or a new city, it was about rebuilding the very foundation of who I was. Efforts to forge new friendships were tentative at first. The fear of repeating past mistakes was a heavy chain around my heart. Each interaction was weighed with the possibility of history repeating itself. Yet, the human desire for connection, for a sense of belonging, pushed me to try, to reach out despite the fear. As days turned into months, I began to notice a shift within myself. The consequences of my actions, once a source of endless pain, had become the seeds of personal growth. I was not the same person who made those choices. I had grown, evolved from the ashes of my former life. Acceptance came slowly, a gradual realization that while I couldn't change the past, I could shape my future. My focus shifted from what had been lost to what could be gained. I embraced my new routine, finding joy in the simplicity of daily life. The city, once a canvas of anonymity, became a landscape of possibilities. Then, unexpectedly, I encountered someone from my past. Their presence was a stark reminder of the journey I had undertaken. We exchanged pleasantries, but the weight of unspoken words hung heavily between us. They saw the change in me, the distance traveled from the person I once was. It was a bittersweet moment, a reflection of both loss and growth. Reflecting on my journey, I understood the true significance of Jake's calm farewell. It wasn't a sign of defeat, but a powerful acknowledgement of his worth and my downfall. In his silence, there was a lesson of strength and self-respect that I had failed to see at the time. My path to redemption was mine to walk alone, a journey of self-discovery, acceptance, and ultimately forgiveness. The new city, with all its challenges and opportunities, was not just a change of scenery, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, capable of rising from the depths of despair to the heights